I've never heard of most of the names you have here. He went on. I've never studied physiology, or biology, or chemistry, or anatomy. I've never even worked in a drug store. Are these patent medicines? Some of them are, Lane said. Some are simple mixtures that don't require a prescription. I'm going to get them. And start the schedule. We'll see how it works. If I get well, we'll try this on others. In a week Lane was so improved that he wanted to begin experiments with other people. Edgar was worried. How do I do it? He asked. Clairvoyance, Lane said. The word meant nothing to Edgar. He went to his mother and asked her the same question. In our dreams, she said, we sometimes can do things that we can't do when we're awake. I have that happen to me often. Perhaps we have powers like that. Maybe everything is in us. As some people say, I've heard preachers talk there is a river about it, and it takes work and study to bring it out. You couldn't study, but you worked hard and wanted to help others. And perhaps this is what the lady in the vision meant when she said, your prayers have been heard. He was not inclined to agree. He was afraid to. Sleeping on books and reciting lessons from them was one thing. Telling a man what was wrong with him and prescribing medicines was quite another. He might kill somebody. There's no chance of that, Lane said. I know enough about medicine to tell whether a thing is dangerous. Besides, medicines that might be poisonous, or have narcotics in them, require a doctor's prescription. We couldn't get them filled even if you prescribed them. So you'll have to give me simple remedies. I'll suggest that. If you name a medicine that I can't get, I'll ask you to name a substitute that is obtainable. In 3 weeks from the time he began the treatments, Lane felt so well that he rented 2 rooms over his VDFE's millinery store and fitted them as his office. He intended to practice suggestive therapeutics and osteopathy, he announced. Edgar knew that he was expected to help. Meanwhile his voice was dwindling. Day by day it became weaker. We'll try again, Lane said. Come over to the office and we'll break in the new couch. It just arrived. Edgar went, doubting and worried. When he woke from the self-imposed sleep his voice was normal again. There was no alternative now. He had to help. Lane. I'm willing to try someone else, he said, if you like. The only condition I set is that you don't tell me who the person is, either before or after. I don't want to know. In a few days the attempt was made. When Edgar awoke, Lane patted him on the shoulder. There is a river, a perfect diagnosis, Lai said. How do you know? Edgar asked. The doctor said the same thing last week, only he didn't know a cure. You gave me one. Perfectly safe. And simple. This thing is wonderful. It can't miss. Months passed. Lane officially opened his office, with Edgar, as silent partner, doing the diagnosing and refusing to take any money. It's bad enough, he told Lane mournfully, but to take money for it, that would be the end. His father frequently came to the experiments. And it was a comfort to Edgar to know that someone was there to watch what went on while he was asleep and be sure that What Lane told him afterward was actually what had happened. It wasn't that he mistrusted Lane, he mistrusted himself while he was asleep. Lane found that he had to tell Edgar where the people were at the time. Some were in the outer office when, known to them, the experiments went on. Others came for examination and were told to return in a few days for a diagnosis and outline of treatment. Meanwhile they were checked on by Edgar. Lane called the experiments red ings and described Edgar's sleep state as a self-imposed hypnotic trance which induces clairvoyance. The patients, according to Lane, improved TMDER the treatments, and many were cured. He himself was immensely better, at least there was no doubt about that. But Edgar remained uncomforted. One dead pâturé was that was needed to make him a murderer. He wanted to quit, yet he couldn't. About once a month. His voice dwindled and faded, and he needed Lane to give There Is a River the suggestion necessary to its return. After a while the periods of its strength began to lengthen. He didn't know whether this was because he was gradually overcoming the condition or whether it was because he was allowing himself to be used for the help of others. Sometimes he hoped one way, sometimes the other. Few people knew what he was up to. He told Gertrude, of course, and she was inclined to worry about it. There was a common belief at the time that subjects of hypnosis eventually went insane and that, at the very least, their health suffered from habitual immersion in trance. I'm glad you have your voice back, and I don't behave. Lane is any Svengali, Gertrude said, but I can't help feeling that it is not good for your health. I wish you'd stop. I wish I could, he answered. Carrie Salter thought that Gertrude's fears and Edgar's doubts were nonsense. She went to Lane's office to witness the experiments, asked questions on the progress of the patients, and flatly said that God had given Edgar a gift intended to be used to help people. I don't care what the rest of you think, she said. But believe me, if I'm ever sick, I'm going to get a reading from Edgar and I'm going to do just what it says. I don't believe. The doctors know what they're talking about anyhow, at least half the time. Such faith frightened Edgar. He prayed that either it be justified or the strange power be taken away from him. He was a full-fledged photographer now, and with the return of his voice Mr. Bowles sent him on trips to the SMR rounding towns. In each place he set up shop for a few days, photographed the school children, newlyweds, and babies, There Is a River, and made postcard pictures of the town hall and other pub, HC buildings. On a night in May, 1902, he arrived in Lafayette. The hotel clerk had a message for him. You're to call the Bowling Green operator, he said. There's a long-distance call for you. The voice at the other end of the wire was familiar. It belonged to Frank Bassett, one of Hopkinsville's younger physicians. Got a job for you over here in Bowling Green, if you want it, Bassett said. Friend of mine named L.D. Potter. NMS a bookstore. His right-hand man is leaving him to start in business for himself and he needs an experienced hand right away. I told him you were the fellow. It's a nice spot. And the salary's good. Edgar made up his mind while he was listening. He wanted to get away from Hopkinsville, from Lane, from the readings. It might be all right to give them, but he wasn't sure. He wanted time to think things over. What worried him most was that Lane was not a physician. With a doctor's approval, a doctor's supervision, he would not have been afraid to try any kind of experiment. WNTH a correspondence school healer, it was different. I'll take the job, he told Bassett. I'll go to Hopkinsville tomorrow and leave for Bowling Green tomorrow night. When he entered the Potter store 2 days later, he felt that he had come back home. There were the books he knew so well, there were the pictures, the frames, the star Tianery, the notebooks, and the fresh-smelling boxes of Pensick. The customers even appeared to be the same book. Store devotees, he had discovered, were a type. He slipped into the job as easily as into an old pair of shoes. He found Bowling Green to be a pretty HTD city of 10,000 on the Barren River. At the junction of the Memphis there is a river division of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. It bustled with students from 3 colleges, a business university, a Bible school, and Ogden College. An institution founded by a rich Bowling Green citizen to provide free higher education for the students of Warren County, of which the city was the seat. The business life of the city clustered around Fountain Square, a lovely island of lawn and shade trees in the center of a sea of red brick buildings and showy storefronts. State and College Streets were its east and west boundaries. Main Street and Frozen Row enclosed it on the north and south. On State Street, a few doors past the end of the square, was the Potter store. At the end of the first day, Mr. Potter took him down State Street, past the square, to a large frame house, painted cream, with white shutters and standing about as far north of the square as the store was south of it. "This is Mrs. Hollins's place," Mr. Potter said. "It's a boarding house where a lot of the young professional folk stay. The meals are good, and it's only a short walk to the store. I think you'll like it." They entered a large reception room. To the left was the dining room. Ahead was a stairway leading to the second floor. Mrs. Hollins, a short, stout, smiling lady, came to greet them. She took Edgar upstairs to show him a room. "The young men have the upper floor," she explained. "The ladies stay on the groined floor. I'm a widow, you know, widdy 2 daughters. They stay here with me. We've some real nice young men. I'm sure you'll like them. How would you like a roommate? I have a big room here, made for 2. Just 1 boy in there now. Let's see if he's in. He's a doctor, eye, ear, nose, and throat specialist. Here. There is a river." She knocked at a door. It opened and a short, wiry young man stood looking at them and smiling. "This is Dr. Hugh Beede," Mrs. Hollins said. "Hugh, this is the new clerk at Potter S. Edgar Case's his name. He's thinking of putting up with us, if we can put up with him, eh?" Edgar shook hands with the YMG man. "You're from Hopkinsville, aren't you?" he asked. "I know about you, but I've never met you." "You're one of the Cases," Dr. Beede said. "I've never met all of them. Has anyone Mrs. Hollins stood, nodding and smiling. "I'll go down and tell Mr. Potter you're going to stay," she said to Edgar. "If you two want to bunk together, all right. If not, I'll find another room." "I'd love to have you move in," Dr. Beasley said. "I'd like some company." "So would I," Edgar said. "I was afraid I was going to be lonesome." They went down to dinner together, and at table Edgar met his dormitory mates. Two of them were brothers, Dr. John Blackburn, a medical practitioner who wore a full Van Dyke beard to disguise his youth, and Dr. James Black, a dentist. The others were Joe Darter, secretary of the YMCA, and Bob Holland, who worked in a department store. They were all about Edgar's age. He liked them at once. They were friendly, helpful, and full of the joy of life. They were doing things that mattered, too, things that Edgar had always dreamed of doing. That night he wrote to Gertrude, "This is the place for us. It's full of young people, and they are all busy doing something. The town is beautiful. At night, it is quiet and the coolness from tybe trees in the square comes. There is a river right in my window. The streets are so clean and the houses all look as if they had just been washed. You will love it." He joined the Christian church and the Christian Endeavor group. Joe Darter took him to lectures and parties. At the YMCA, he opened a bank account. Life was beginning all over again. The dream lasted 2 weeks. Then his voice began to fade. After closing time on Saturday, he called Lane by long distance and whispered his predicament over the telephone. Me told him to come to Hopkinsville. He took the night train, went to Lane's office the next morning, and put himself to sleep. When he awakened, his voice was normal. "This is liable to hit you at any time, Edgar," Lane said. "Why don't you let me come over to Bowling Green on Sim Day once in a while? We can keep your voice in good shape, and I can ask about my patients." Edgar was stuck. "All right," he said. At first Lane came twice a month. Soon the visits became weekly. It was a chore to ease Beasley out of the room every Sunday afternoon so the readings could be given. Edgar dared not tell any of his young doctor friends about it, or anyone in Bowling Green, for that matter. He was afraid. When he was with Beasley, the Blackburns, and his other new friends, or when he was with Gertrude, he knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted to five a normal, simple, ordinary Christian life, married to the girl he loved, living in the town he liked, with the friends he had chosen. He didn't want to be queer or different. He didn't want to be a psychic medium, or a somnambulist, or a mystic healer. But when Lane talked about having increasing success with his patients, he was disquieted. Suppose he had a real power, and the use of diet power for sick people was his There is a River mission? It seemed so simple. The vision. The ability to sleep on books and know their contents, the loss of his voice, its recovery through the discovery of his real power. If only he could be sure. If only the doctors believed it, instead of Lane, with his correspondence school knowledge and his magnetic treatments. Late in the summer, on a sticky August day, he received a telephone call from Hopkinsville. It was from Mr. C. H. Dietrich, former superintendent of the Hopkinsville Public Schools. Mr. Lane has told me of the things you have done for some of his patients, Mr. Dietrich said. I have a little girl who's been ill for a long time. No one seems to be able to help her. There'll be a ticket waiting for you at the railroad station if you'll come over here someday and see what you can do for her. My wife wants you to come, too. I'll meet you at the station. Edgar said he would go. Mr. Dietrich was one of the most eminent and respected men in Hopkinsville. He must know what he was doing. Still, it might be that he was at the end of his hope, ready to try anything. In that case, if all the doctors had given the child up, there was nothing to be lost by trying a reading. At the station, Edgar fingered the ticket curiously. It was the first material thing he had ever received for the use of his power. Could the thing really be worth something? In Hopkinsville, Mr. Dietrich, a small, quiet, reserved man, met him at the station with a carriage. On the way to the house, he explained that his daughter, Aim, had been ill for 3 years. She was now 5, and since the age of 2, after an attack of grippe, her mind had not developed. She had been taken to many specialists. None had been able to cure her or even stop the convulsions which attacked her in increasing numbers. Her mind was a blank. There is a river. She is at home now, Mr. Dietrich said. We have had some treatments here, but she just gets worse. 20 convulsions a day, sometimes. When they got to the house, Mr. Dietrich took him in to see the child. She was in her playroom, sitting on the floor with her building blocks. She looked like any normal, healthy girl of her age. A nurse sat in a chair nearby, watching her. Do you want to examine her? Mr. Dietrich asked. No, Edgar said. She looked healthier than he felt. In the living room, Mrs. Dietrich was talking to Lane. Edgar, anxious to get it over with, lay down on the sofa and put himself to sleep. When he awakened, Mrs. Dietrich was weeping. Mr. Casey, she said, you've given us the first hope we've had for a normal baby. You'll just have to stay and see whether Mr. Lane makes the adjustments properly. Edgar stared at her. What did I say? He asked. You told us that she slipped and struck the end of her spine while getting out of the carriage a few days before catching grippe. The grippe germs settled in her spine and caused the attacks. Mr. Lane is to make some osteopathic adjustments, and she will recover. Edgar looked at Lane and thought about jail. Mail. Order osteopath and somnambulist partner jailed for medical fraud, the papers would say. I'll telephone Yom, employer, and ask him to let you off, Mr. Dietrich said. Edgar looked at Mrs. Dietrich. She was watching him, waiting for his answer. I'll stay, he said, in a voice that was barely audible. He went to his home for dinner and spent the evening with Gertrude. Next morning he went to Dietrich's and gave a reading. When he awakened, Mrs. Dietrich smiled at him. There is a river, you'll have to stay a little longer, she said. The adjustments have not been made quite correctly. When he was able to get Lane alone, Edgar asked him if he knew what he was doing. Of course, Lane said. But it's a difficult thing to get right the first time, and I'm being particularly careful and Gentle, so the spine won't be bruised or hurt. Lane tried again, and in the afternoon another reading was taken. The treatment was more nearly as it was desired, but still imperfect. Lane tried again, and next morning an other check reading, as Lane called it, was taken. This time the adjustments had been properly made. Edgar left that afternoon for Bowling Green. Lane was to continue the treatments every day for 3 weeks. "But I'll be over next week to see you," he told Edgar at the station. When Lane arrived the following Sunday, he had good news. The Dietrich child was responding. She had suddenly called the name of a doll of which she had been fond before. Her attacks began a day after that. She had called her mother by name, then her father. "She's picking up where she left off," Lane said. Mrs. Dietrich says her mind is in the state of development it had attained just before it went blank. At the end of 3 weeks, Lane took a check reading on the case. The child, Edgar reported, was developing normally and would continue to do so. The condition which had caused the illness was corrected. No further treatments were necessary. After 3 months, Mrs. Dietrich told Lane that her daughter was normal in all respects and was rapidly covering. The educational ground diet separated her from other children of her age. There had been no recurrence of the attacks. "There is a river." Edgar was pleased and relieved, but he warned Lane not to publicize the case, and continued to keep the meetings at Bowling Green a secret. He still had a single goal: marriage to Gertrude, with a natural, normal life thereafter in Bowling Green. What he needed to realize this ambition was money. He was saving part of his salary, but he dreamed of making a big sum, so that he could buy a house and have it all furnished for his bride. During the winter he came close to getting just what he wanted. He was placed on the entertainment committee at the YMCA, and along with an art teacher of the public schools, a man named F.O. Putnam, planned parties and dances for the members. For one of these affairs, Putnam suggested that they devise a new card game. Edgar, who listened every evening at the dinner table to discussions of the wheat market in Chicago, worked out something he called PIT, or Board of Trade. The cards represented quantities of grain, and the idea was to come of the wheat market. It was so popular at the entertainment for which it had been invented that special decks of cards were printed for Y members. Edgar sent a sample to a game company. He received a cordial letter thanking him for the idea. Soon PIT games flooded the country. Edgar received a dozen decks of the cards, with the company's compliments. He protested. He went to a lawyer. The company pointed out that it owned the copyright and reminded him that he could be prosecuted if he attempted to print and sell the cards himself. "You should have had a reading on it," Lane told him. "It would have warned you to copyright the game before sending it to the company. There is a river." "A lawyer would have told me the same thing, if I had sense enough to ask him," Edgar said. "Listen," Lane said, "I want to tell you what you've just done." It was Sunday afternoon. Edgar had awakened from his sleep. Lane pointed to the notebook in which he had put down the suggestions for his patients which Edgar had given while asleep. One of these patients was in New York. His name is P.A. Andrews. According to his stationery, his managing director of the Mechanicsburg Railroad. He heard about you from Dr. Quackenboss. You see, I've been sending reports to the doctor. He paused, waiting for Edgar to be impressed. What did I say about him? Edgar asked. You gave a fine diagnosis, although I don't know whether it fits the case. You outlined treatments, too. What I'm driving at is that this man wants to pay you. He expects that you'll charge for your services. That's natural. You should. In no time at all you can make more money than you ever would have got from a card game. Edgar shook his head. That's out, he said. I'll have to solve it some other way. What are you going to do? Lane asked. Edgar gazed out the window. It was spring. The birds were chattering in the trees on Fountain Square. The leaves were coming out. The odor of quickened earth drifted into him. I'm going to get married anyhow, he said. Lane stared absently at his notebook. Did you ever hear of Clarawater? He said. There is a river, you gave it for Mr. Andrews. It's probably some patented tonic. When are you getting married? They were silent then. Across the street a mockingbird was building a nest in a tree in Mrs. McCluskey's yard. T. Hay were married on Wednesday, June 17, 1903, at the Hill. Dr. Beasley and Bob Holland accompanied Edgar from Bowling Green to give him moral support. With Hugh and Lynn, Gertrude's brothers, they formed a committee of 4 to serve as best man. The squire, with his wife and 4 daughters, arrived with Harry Smith, minister of the Christian Church in Hopkinsville, who was to perform the ceremony. Carrie Salter, Stella, Amt, Kate, and Mrs. Evans all crowded into the bride's room to help her dress. Will and Hiram, assisted by Porter and Bay Mond, were hosts to the men. It was a lovely spring afternoon. They all gathered in the living room. T was afraid we were never going to make it, Edgar whispered to Gertrude. T always knew we would, someday, she said. It was 6 years, 3 months, and 3 days since they had become engaged. After the ceremony, the committee, serving as best man, bundled them into a buggy and escorted them. In a second there is a river carriage to Guthrie, one of the villages near Hopkinsville. There the party had dinner. Afterward Gertrude and Edgar took the train to Bowling Green. He had rented a room for them at Mrs. McCluskey's, just across the street from Mrs. Hollins's place. They were to take their meals with Mrs. Hollins. The McCluskey house was a large frame building. Gertrude walked up to it with her eyes fixed on the circular staircase that was visible through the open front door. She felt that it was a good omen. Her grandfather had come to Hopkinsville to build a circular staircase. He had stayed there and raised a family. Their room looked toward the square. Gertrude leaned out the window, inhaling the fresh odor that drifted to her from the trees and the gardens that had come to life around the fountain. Tifow were right, Edgar, she said. This is the place for. Next day she walked through the neighboring streets, fed the birds in the square, and wrote to her mother that I didn't believe there was such a lovely place in Kentucky. On Sunday, when she and Edgar crossed the street to Mrs. Holin's for dinner, she saw a familiar figure in the reception room. "Edgar, what's Lane doing over here?" she asked. Edgar explained, but he realized that his reasons sounded lame. Gertrude was ruffled. "He could at least have stayed away today," she said. "This is the first Sunday of our married life." At the dinner table she was cool to Lane. Judge Roop, an occasional boarder who rode a circuit as magistrate and was also a newspaperman, noticed it. He was curious about me, having seen him at the table on many Sundays. "Mr. Lane," he said casually, "they tell me you're a doctor." "There is a river." John Blackburn looked up. James Blackburn looked up. Beasley looked up. Edgar became very busy with his mashed potatoes. "Yes," Lane said. "Tell me," Roop went on. "How is it that you favor Bowl in Green with a visit almost every Sunday?" "I come to see Edgar," Lane said. "Is he sick?" Roop asked. "We have several fine doctors here." He nodded toward the Blackburn boys and Beasley. "Can't they help?" Edgar looked at his plate. Gertrude stared straight at Lane. "Well," Lane said, "Edgar doesn't like to talk about it, but I come here to ask him about my patients." Everyone looked at Edgar. "Ask him about your patients," Roop said. "Is Edgar a doctor? What's he been keeping from us?" "He is gifted with a very unusual power," Lane said. "He has the ability to hypnotize himself, and while in that state, he is clairvoyant. He can see other people and diagnose their ailments. He cured himself of aphonia after being unable to speak above a whisper for a year. He read me of an illness. T to the power of T had bothered me for years. He has helped many others. If you wish, I will let you see a demonstration this afternoon. I am Sinra. You will say it is the most unusual thing you have ever seen." Nobody spoke. The meal was finished in a hurry. Roop finally managed to say, "TD like to see it." Gertrude fled across the street and went to her room in tears. They went upstairs to Beasley's room. And while Edgar waited for his dinner to settle, though he was sure this was one meal he would never digest, Lane told the story of his experiments, including the Dietrich case. The boys asked lots of questions, particularly John Blackburn, the physician. "There is a river." Finally Edgar put himself to sleep. When he awakened, his friends looked at him with speculation and wonder. John Black spoke to Lane. "Dr. Lane," he said, "the first person you asked about was given certain medicines to take. Are you going to give those medicines?" "I am," Lane said. "The second patient was advised to take electrical vibra tie-ins. Are you going to give them?" "Yes," Lane said. "The third person," said Blackburn, "was told to have osteopathic adjustments. Are you going to give those?" "Yes," Lathremi said. Blackburn smiled blandly. "Dr. Lane," he asked, "what medical school did you attend?" Lane blushed. "I haven't been to any school yet," he said. "I've studied a lot by myself. But most of what I know has come from Edgar during the past 2 years, while he's been asleep. You have been treating patients. You have an awful see. Yes, in Hopkinsville. Your patients always improve or get well from these treatments. Invariably, if they do as they are told. Tell me this. Why does Edgar mix up his treatments so? There are many schools of medicine: allopathic, homeopathic, naturopathic, osteopathic. Edgar seems to use them all. That doesn't make sense. I think it does. Some people need one form of treatment, some need another. No one school has all the remedies. They talked on and on, till La Three had to leave to catch There Is a River his train. Then they questioned Edgar. When he returned to Mrs. McCluskey's, he was tired and bewildered. Gertrude had got over her own feelings. She put her arms around him. "I'm glad it's out, and they know," she said. "You can't hide a thing like that. Just promise me that you won't let it take you away from me or from the things you want to do." "I won't," he promised. "Someday I would like to know just what it is, and what I am supposed to do with it." I felt like such a fool in front of those boys, Jim and John and Hugh, all doctors with degrees and offices. And me telling people how to take osteopathic treatments and dictating prescriptions while I'm asleep. It's fantastic. She kissed him. "Don't worry about it," she said. "Just don't use it for an evil purpose, and I'm sure it won't do you any harm." But she wasn't sure. Neither was he. My mother says he was talking to convince both of them that if it's a thing of God, it will do only good. If it's a thing of the devil, it won't succeed. "The devil has many disguises," Gertrude said. "I hope we recognize him when he comes." The next evening there was an article in the Bowling Green Times-Journal by Judge Roop T. Ewing of the previous day's experiment. The Nashville papers copied the story. Edgar prepared to be peered at, questioned, and pointed out, as he had been in Hopkinsville during the time that Hart worked on him. "I reckon I'm in for it," he said to Gertrude. She laughed. "You should see the ladies look at me," she said. Lane made 2 more visits to Bowling Green. Then, at the request of TB medical authorities of the state, he closed his office and discontinued practice. There is a river. /V can't have a man like that treating people, John Blackburn explained to Edgar. He hasn't the knowledge or training. Even if there is something in what you're doing, a qualified doctor ought to be administering it. Or, he added, a flock of them. You don't seem to have any prejudices. Lane wrote Edgar that he was leaving immediately for Franklin, Kentucky, to enter the Southern School of Osteopathy and prepare himself to be a collaborator with the Reed-Ings. A week later Edgar began to lose his voice again. He appealed to John Blackburn. He felt indebted to him for handling the situation with Lane so tactfully that no favorable publicity resulted and no charges were brought, to be relieved of the fear of arrest or disgrace, which had been with him almost constantly while Lane was practicing, was a blessing. But he had to get his voice back. Blackburn was not so reluctant as he had supposed. He was curious to experiment, but worried lest he be unable to bring Edgar out of it. Just tell me to wake up, Edgar said, and in about a minute it will happen. He wrote out the suggestion to be given for regaining his voice. Then he went to sleep. They were alone in Black Bum's office. When he awakened, Blackburn was standing by the door, pale and trembling. "Let's get out of here," he said. Edgar went with him down the stairway and out into the street. They walked rapidly toward the square. "You did it," Black BM said. "I watched the blood go up into your chest and throat. Then I saw it come back again. As soon as you went to sleep you talked normally. Your voice is all right now. And you woke up when I told you to there is a river. I thought all that stufferly with Lane might be hooey, but this is no fake. I saw it happen. What's it all about?" "I wish I knew," Edgar said unhappily. "That's what worries me. I don't know what it's all about." A few days later a letter arrived from Mr. Andrews, the New York man for whom Clara water had been prescribed. He had been unable to find it, although he had inquired at all the leading drug houses. He was advertising for it in the medical journals, but in the meantime, why couldn't Edgar go to sleep and tell him where it could be found or of what ingredients it was composed? Edgar showed the letter to Blackbeam. "I don't seem to know what I'm talking about," he said. "This is what I've been afraid of all along. Lane always said he could find anything I prescribed, but here's proof against me."